Welcome back to another episode of the Full Disclosure Podcast. Today we brought on a special guest, Peter Hugh, who's actually a co-founder of Good Neighbor Realty. As
Ooh.
you guys, as you guys know, we had Chantal on here previously, so now we have her other partner on this today. How are you doing?
Doing great.
All right,
Trying to show up Chantal here.
let's get right into it. So, Peter, you're one of the few agents in the world, brokers, that don't actually suck
Yeah.
at what they do.
You're the 1% for sure.
And I know this because I've worked with a lot of different realtors from like Keller Williams, and I've actually seen in detail their like recruiting process, their training process, and kind of how you start off as an agent there, and you're like basically like the equivalent of like a dishwasher at a strip club, and you get to kind of work your way up to the pole eventually. But I feel like at Good Neighbor, you kind of just start on the pole.
Yeah, we don't have time for dishwashing over a Good Neighbor, I don't think. I guess we're trying to download as much information into our agents like as quickly as possible so that we can stop working as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I noticed your agents, they get deals relatively quick. Like at those other brokerages I've seen, like the ramp up period's like 6 months. Like they tell you need 6 months of savings or, a part-time job or something to get to the point where you can like actually support yourself. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. And also a lot of their lead gen strategies is like, hey, just kind of sit here at this phone, and when it rings, answer it. And if it rings and someone wants to buy a house, then that's your lead. But you guys do things a little bit differently. And I think it's because one, you're a smaller team, but two, you found like this interesting niche that you guys have capitalized on better than anybody that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean our inbound marketing is really good. We have a really good marketing team, and that's evolved for the last few years here. So like we've got a really good like in-house team that gets us inbound leads at a very competitive rate compared to like Zillow and Realtor.com and all those places.
Yeah, I know we talked about it with Chantal, but just give everybody a little bit of a background of what Good Neighbor specializes in and where you guys are at in terms of revenue, amount of agents, just a full rundown.
Yeah, so at Good Neighbor Realty, we specialize. About 90% of our business comes from STR investments. We invest in short-term rental almost exclusively. All of our agents have to have at least one short-term rental investment to be on the team. And it's been going really well for us for the past few years. We've really settled into this niche.
Yeah. So the bulk of what I want to talk about with you is recessions and this recession that we may or may not be in, because you are one of the few people who used to focus on foreclosures. So you saw what the economy looked like in that era, and then you pivoted during really, really good times, but when there weren't any foreclosures. And then now it looks like there might be more foreclosures coming up. So you've kind of seen the cycle. So you are probably the most calm person I've seen about this recession, or I think we're in a recession. I think most people do. I think the government denies it or has denied it up until this point. But you're extremely chill and calm. Being in a section of the market that most people would consider not necessarily recession resistant, which is, you just said 90% of your business is short-term rentals, which is travel, which people do less of during a recession. And you also have a pretty amazing short-term rental portfolio. But yet you look like you get a massage every day. So how is this possible? Like, why are you so calm?
I guess a lot of it comes from mindset. I mean, we did used to deal with foreclosures a lot, and that was kind of a huge roller coaster compared to what we do now. The passive income on short-term rentals makes it pretty easy to stay calm. I mean, the bank account just kind of keeps going up with the short-term rental portfolio. You're making 2.5 to 3 times as much as long-term rent. And, once you have it all automated and once you get your cleaners right and you have your automated pricing all done, then it's kind of a plug and play type of business. So regardless of whether it's a recession, I just kind of believe in real estate, whether it's long-term rent, short-term rent. midterm, anything to deal with real estate. I think it's just a great way to leverage your money. I know that interest rates are pretty high right now, but I guess like the higher the interest rate is, the more I'm kind of celebrating because I'm getting a better deal. And I'm getting a better deal for both my team, myself, and my clients.
Yeah. So us three had lunch last week and we talked about, well, you mainly drilled us on why we should be buying right now. And a lot of people out there are probably saying, it doesn't really make sense. The interest rates are going through the roof. So can you kind of explain that to the audience as well and like why they need to prepare and start buying right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm specializing in Denver. We do have a small Georgia team too, but in the last 10 years, there really hasn't been an opportunity like this. 2009 was through 2011 was probably the last time it was like a neutral market here in Denver. We've just seen rapid growth for the past decade, and there really hasn't been an opportunity to get like a great deal for like the average client. Now, these days, it is extremely easy to get a good deal. The interest rates are high. The fear is high. So now is like, if you can do it, it's the best time to accumulate wealth. In a recession, millionaires are made. So, don't be gun shy, I guess.
But I know the average person is sitting right now, and by average person, I mean someone who isn't a real estate investor. Maybe they bought one house in their life or no house in their life. They're sitting here and they're like, well, I'll just wait a little bit longer. I'll just wait until the prices go 10% lower, 15% lower. Why do you think that's dumb?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like super dumb. It's kind of like in stock market, you just kind of keep buying to like cost average your investment. Like as you get older, Tesla's not going to stay the same price every time, but you should still keep buying because if you believe in the company, it's going to go up long term. And that's kind of the same thing with real estate. You just purchase and you wait. And there's no reason to like be like, okay, like I need to get the absolute best deal in June of 2023 because that's when like the market's going to be at the very bottom. You're just not going to be able to time the market like that. So you should just continue to buy, continue to get the benefits, continue to get the passive income, and you'll eventually hit the bottom, and you'll eventually like buy at the bottom, and then you'll come back up, and it'll all appreciate.
Yeah. So how do you feel about people talking about, right now buying an Airbnb doesn't make sense, like traveling is the first thing that's going to get cut off. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess I would say that like Airbnb and short-term rental is the absolute best way to make passive income right now. So, there's all these backup plans. You can do long-term rent, you can do midterm rent. And I mean, the important thing is that you need an exit strategy if you're nervous about investing in real estate. So if that's like you find a house with two separate entrances or two kitchens where you can long-term rent both units and cover the mortgage that way if Airbnb doesn't work out. But it's kind of all about the cash flow and the exit strategies. And you just don't want to be caught like having to sell the property when you don't want to and like losing a little bit of money.
Yeah.
As long as you're able to hold the property long-term, there's really like a very small chance that you'll lose money.
Yeah. And there's always like, people can always do like room for room rent. They can always just do, month to month rent, furnished properties. There's a lot of things out there that people can do in terms of, making sure they occupy the space.
Yeah. And I always say like, hey, if you don't think short-term rent makes sense, then nothing makes sense. Then like you shouldn't be investing in real estate because it's the highest cash flowing. It's the best cash on cash. You're just making a lot more in passive income than any other strategy. So if you can't do that right now and you don't think it makes sense to you, then I mean, keep your money in the bank.
That's funny because we had a client yesterday that just told us short-term rental doesn't make sense for them.
I mean, hey, if there are other ways for you to make a good return, that's not passive, then go for that. I mean, of course, there's like a lot more things that make more money than short-term rental, but it's just the best way to do it without like a lot of effort, I guess.
Yeah. What are your guys' plan for Good Neighbor going into next year in this recession, probably I assume people are going to stop buying less. Are you guys going to change your strategies, like target investors mainly? What is your guys' plan with that?
Yeah, so we've seen like a pretty huge like dip in buyers
Okay.
lately, like since probably March
Mhm.
of this year. So for the last 6 months, we've really been focusing our ads on like investors.
Mm.
So sophisticated investors who are a little bit wealthier. And I got to tell you, like right now, those types of clients, people who have like higher net worth, who are buying multiple investments, are extremely excited about how like fearful everyone else is about the market, and they know that this is the time to strike, and like just kind of like build your portfolio, and then when it turns around again, you know, appreciation and passive income is just gonna snowball.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing you told us was like, you guys need to stop having a broke mindset. All of these high net worth people are super excited right now for this recession. And he's like, you guys should be too. So that was something that stuck with us for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so for you having experience dealing with foreclosures and seeing what that niche is like, I remember we spoke to Chantal when she was here,
Mhm.
and she was like, everyone's scared of foreclosing, but she's like, it happens to a very specific kind of person, and she's like, they'll have like 6 dogs or something. So we have a joke that like the more dogs you have, the higher your likelihood of foreclosure. Every dog increases your risk. So it seems like the majority of foreclosures is not, or at least that you've seen, it's typically not an investor that may be over leveraged or anything like that. It's probably just like a single homeowner that just lost their job or fell behind on their payments or whatever.
Yeah, I would say that, since we did this foreclosure stuff in Denver, it was the fewest amount of foreclosures in the entire state. So I think it was like a rolling 2,000 people in the entire state. I mean, the population is like 6 million or something. And I think like there's over 3 million homeowners. So it's an extremely small percentage of people who are in foreclosure.
Right. Because I mean, for me, I'm like, okay, let's say I get into the market at, and this is kind of since we've thought about our last conversation. Let's say we get into the market at an all-time high interest rates. And for whatever reason, like, the CEO of Airbnb deletes the app for everybody. Just like we're shut down, apps deleted overnight. I'm like, well, I would either like move into one of the rooms and like rent out the others, or like rent them midterm on like Facebook Marketplace or VRBO or whatever. Like there's very little that could happen where I would be like, oh shit, like I have this $4,000 a month payment that I can't make at all, even with my other income and my other properties compensating for it, whatever, for whatever reason. There's very little that could happen that like I couldn't come up with a strategy and pivot last minute. So one of the things I remember from our last conversation was that you were like, because I was like, what are your views on short-term rentals, and if the market gets bad and people stop traveling or whatever, and you're like, we've already pivoted like 3 times, and every single time we've found a way to make money, so we'll just pivot to something else, which is kind of interesting because it just means like, if you think about it from your perspective, what that really means is like you trust your skill set and you trust your ability to make money because you've made money in 3 or 4 different ways at this point. So I think for me, once I thought about that, and I was like, what is actually the odds of me foreclosing on a property, no matter the mortgage payment? I was like, probably like less than like a half of a 1%. And that's really if I just decided to like be like, all right, well, fuck this, just, let it go to the bank or whatever. Like it's just very, very unlikely. But for a lot of people, they're always worried about their real estate portfolio. Or I've seen this with first time home buyers too, or first time investors. They're just so scared about like foreclosure. So why do you think that for the average person that shouldn't? I mean, I gave my reasons, but what do you think? Why do you think for the average person that shouldn't really be a fear?
It is just like extremely unlikely. I mean, your safety net, I mean, most people's safety nets are like, they've got parents, they've got jobs, they've got spouses, they've got brothers and sisters who might be able to lend them some money. I mean, the people that are in pre-foreclosure and foreclosure now are really, they just didn't think about exit strategies. They have a mindset of like, a little bit of a victim mindset, but at the same time, they just don't have like a societal like safety net that like most of us have. I mean, even if I stop making money and it just, I was injured or something, like I know that like I have like a spouse and parents and in-laws and just so many people that can like help me out. So like I guess like in terms of any investment, I would look at the worst case scenario first and be like, look, like what is like the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to this particular house? And like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like the house could burn down. I'm like, that's great. Like so many people make money off like houses that are burned down.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you make a lot more money from the insurance that way. So that's really not like the worst thing that can happen, right? So like it would have to be like I guess like the worst case scenario is you just can't afford it. You can't afford the mortgage for at least 9 months. And then there's still options for you to keep the house. So, I mean, the government makes it really hard for you to lose a house. It might mess up your credit and stuff, but I mean, I've seen a lot of people rent out their houses even when they're not making the mortgage payment,
Yeah.
and they're just like making money anyway. Like it's really hard to lose money if you're like doing a long term real estate strategy of any kind, really.
Yeah, I think for me, I would just, like you said, I would just sleep in one of the rooms and rent out all the other rooms and just move out of the apartment, give away the car, or do something. I think that's
Rent
if
the
it were
garage.
rent the garage. Yeah,
Yeah.
built the garage and rent it out.
I'd have
And
like
that's pretty-
30
Turn it
people.
into a gym. Charge memberships there.
Yeah, and that's like that's a kind of the extreme too. It's like you guys can afford the mortgage for like the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
You can just leave it vacant, and you can still afford the mortgage. So like, I don't know. The fear is like kind of overblown in a lot of people's like minds, I think.
So you mentioned that it's not a terrible idea to wait right now, but I've always looked at it as like, those people, because I've had people say to me they're going to wait in 2018 for the bottom of the market. And, they're still waiting. So I think from my perspective, it's very unlikely that you're going to like sit on the sidelines for all these years and all this time. And then suddenly you're going to be able to identify the perfect opportunity and the right property in the right neighborhood and jump in at the right time at the best price with the best interest rate. Like it's just kind of, to me, it's kind of silly to think that you're going to get into a game that you've never been in at the exact right time. And you're just going to be smarter than everybody and get in at the right time. So I've kind of been on the same philosophy. Like I bought my first property a few years ago. And I remember I started looking at my first property to buy in 2018. And I remember a very experienced investor. He was like, yeah, I don't know. Things are kind of expensive right now. And this was and he had been investing for like 20 years. And this was in 2018. So I think that I'm going to just wait philosophy. Number one, I'm just not that patient. Like I hate the idea of like, well, in 8 months from now, I'm going to buy another property. Like I'm always just like, how can I buy a property now? Like with the resources that I have. So why do you think that you have dealt with a lot of, first time investors or just inexperienced investors? Why do you think that a lot of them do you think they're just waiting because it genuinely doesn't feel like a great time to buy? Or do you think that they actually just, should be trying to time the market or whatever?
I think that's like that's pretty tough to answer. I mean, I guess like most people are just fearful of things that of like an unknown. So it's like very understandable that like a first time home buyer or somebody who's like kind of risking, kind of like risking all of their money to invest in like an expensive house, like a $500,000 house in Denver is going to be like kind of a big deal to somebody who's a first time home buyer who only has like 30 or 40 grand in the bank. And it's going to seem like an extremely huge risk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very understandable. But for like seasoned investors, and I guess for people who have like their risk allocation in like stocks and real estate and a little bit of crypto, maybe like they should be very excited to kind of invest in this particular like time right now, I guess. Like high interest rates really just like kind of block out a lot of people. They make it so that houses are not affordable to like people that are making even like the average amount. I mean, I think the average household salary in Denver is somewhere south of like $80,000. I think it's like 70, something like that. So like if you're kind of a sophisticated investor, if you're like not that risk averse, then now's the time. Like you should be jumping in with the mindset that like in a couple of years, the interest rates are going to go back down, and we're just like my house is going to appreciate. And it's because like it's all artificial right now. The government is increasing the interest rate every month or every quarter, and they're telling you that. They're telling us that like we're doing that right now because inflation is super high. So like if your money's just sitting in the bank, you're losing 8% every year, at least 8%. And so you got to invest now in something. It doesn't really even matter if it's real estate, if it's just like in companies, in growth stocks and tech. It just really doesn't matter. It just should not be in the bank right now.
What was your thoughts like during COVID when we just started printing all this money? Like, did you kind of see what happened with interest rates? Did you kind of see that ahead of time, and then what's happening now, or were you just like, whatever?
So I guess like interest rates were extremely low even before COVID, right? So
It
like
was like 4% or something, 4.2, 4.3.
What was your interest rate on Marigold?
3.3.
yeah, so like interest rates have been historically low for the last decade. I bought my first property in 2012. I think my interest rate was 3.5% then, and everybody was telling me then what I didn't really know anything back then, but everybody was telling me, hey, 3.5 is like basically free. Inflation's somewhere around 2 to 3% right now, so you're basically getting like a 0.5% interest rate. And I was like, okay, like we gotta get in on this. We bought the first property, me and my girlfriend, now wife, and we just kind of like house hacked for a while and kind of like kept upgrading and buying a couple more properties over the last decade. So like I guess I didn't see it, like COVID didn't really affect the interest rates very much, I guess. Like it was already very close to 0%. And they kind of like goosed it a little bit more down. But and here's the thing, like right after, like a couple months after COVID, the market was hotter than it had ever been. So I mean, people were still buying houses sight unseen. Like we weren't even allowed to show properties like a couple months after COVID hit, and people were still buying properties just without seeing them.
So now, how long do you think, and this is just a speculation, until interest rates get below like 4% again?
People are predicting kind of like a hard landing next year. So, I mean, I would agree with you that like there's a recession now, but people are predicting like a tougher quarter, I guess. Like Q1, Q2 might be even worse. So we're looking at like probably at least at least like 1% more, or I guess like 1% higher than it is now. So we're looking at like 6.5% rates for like a conventional loan, for like just a normal person who's trying to buy a house, and it might be 1 point higher by next year. So I'd say that like the recession is going to continue for another year, and it might like ease off. It all depends on the inflation numbers. So if we get production back up, if like food stops going up like 15% every week, then interest rates will naturally go down, and the Fed will just kind of stop raising rates.
Yeah. So what's your, I know you talked about it with us, but I want the channel to hear it as well. What's your strategy with, then I know you're purchasing a property soon, or are you under contract on that one yet, the bridge one?
Yes.
Okay. So you're purchasing that one, and I assume you're planning to purchase more. So what is your plan with those properties, and also what do you have in mind in terms of exit strategies?
Sure. So all of my properties that I'm purchasing and that I've purchased in the past couple of years have been short-term rental, have had like short-term rental in mind.
Mm.
So I've purchased a couple single family houses, one like cabin in the mountains here in Denver or in Blackhawk,
Mhm.
and then this one that we're purchasing is in Evergreen, Colorado. So our plan is to kind of take advantage of the unique property
Mhm.
tag on Airbnb, and hopefully we'll make like 25 to 50% more than all of the other houses in Evergreen, just because this one is a little bit unique. It's like on a bridge. It's got some water.
It would go
flowing
under the
through it.
unique, literally the unique tab, right?
It would need to, I think. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it has a chance to do a lot of other stuff, like maybe like the OMG tag or
Mhm.
like, like whatever, like the mountain property tag.
Yeah.
So we're kind of trying to capitalize on that for this particular property. Exit strategies, like this particular one is Airbnb basically has to work. Or we can long-term rent it to cover most of the mortgage, but it's not going to cover all of the mortgage if we can't do short-term rent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I saw you showed us the home that was literally on the cliff that was like $4 million. I was like, you guys preach exit strategies, but I don't see an exit strategy here.
Yeah, that one in particular. I mean, this is a pretty great deal. I would say that like if SDR held up for another 2 or 3 years, it'd be a great deal.
Yeah.
So you pick it up for $4 million, literally on a cliff. It's making $600,000 a year gross, so probably around 400 net, which is a pretty darn good return. It's a 10% cap rate even after expenses, so that's pretty unheard of in that price point, or in really any like real estate price point that is outside of STR. So the cap rate is somewhere between 12 and 18%.
Nice.
If you're talking gross.
Yeah, so I also wanted to ask you, with Good Neighbor, your guys' brokerage, what are you guys doing to recruit talent to your team? And then also, are you guys planning to expand even more outside of Colorado and Georgia?
Yeah, I think like eventually we want to be the STR specialized brokerage for most of the, I guess like most of the West Coast. So
Okay.
like we're going to expand into Seattle.
Oh, you guys are?
Yeah, so
When?
we'll be doing that like probably before the end of the year here.
Okay.
I'll get my managing broker's license over there, and we'll kind of just like try to repeat what we're doing here.
Mhm.
Seattle's Airbnb numbers are not as good as here in Denver. I mean, real estate's a little more expensive over there.
Is regulation tougher there?
Actually, regulations are a little bit better, I would say. Like in like King County, which is like where Seattle is, you can have like 2 STRs with no restrictions. So yeah, it's like a lot better than Denver. So we're expanding into areas where the restrictions are a little bit less, but also where there are still restrictions.
Mm.
Like, because I mean, we're talking about like Phoenix and Arizona that have like absolutely 0 restrictions, and everyone is getting into it. So it's getting a little oversaturated over there, is what I'm hearing from a lot of our Arizona investors.
Yeah. JR and I talk about it all the time of how regulation is a good thing. But when we talk to our clients, and I'm sure you guys get it from your clients, they speak about regulation on how it's a bad thing. And they'll be like, oh, well, I checked Denver and it's regulated, so Colorado is just an absolute no-go. Can you speak about your opinion on regulation and why you believe it's a good thing? And you see markets like Arizona and Texas where it still could, you still could do really well, but there's barely any regulation there.
Yeah, I would say that like the absolute best place to invest here in Colorado would be places that have like hard caps on like how many STRs are going to be allowed there. So places like Wheat Ridge, Gilpin County, those are places where it's heavily regulated, but once you're in, you kind of have a really nice competitive advantage. So maybe only like 2% of the single family homes in that area are allowed to be STRs. Blackhawk, I think, and Gilpin County is like 5% or something like that. So once you get in and you get that license, you'll probably be able to do Airbnb for a lot longer than some of the other unregulated areas.
Yeah. Do you think regulation will keep on growing and move into cities like, for we're speaking Colorado, like Westminster, Arvada? I know we talked about it before. Westminster is in the talks of it, but they're looking at fair regulation. But nationwide, overall, people's concerns is like, well, short-term rental is getting cracked down. What is your opinion on that?
I think that like SDR will continue to be regulated like more and more in especially like larger cities.
Mhm.
Just because like the liability is kind of growing.
Mhm.
Like I guess like for cities, like you need regulation. I mean, Denver's doing like long-term rent regulation
They
at the
are?
beginning of next year.
What is the
Yeah.
regulation?
I mean, you just have to have a license. Somebody's going to come in and like inspect your home for safety and stuff like that. Yeah, just
I
for
remember
long-term
putting
rental.
we had an apartment, we were moving into a new apartment and there was like a 30-day, like our lease ended in August, but we could move in we can move into our new one in July.
Mhm.
So I put the apartment up on Airbnb and tried to do short-term rental, and Airbnb literally blocked it and was like, you need a license to be able to do short-term rental, and you also need to you can't do it for less than 29 days. But good thing somebody still booked it for 29 days.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
How do you decide what properties you choose for your personal portfolio? Like, what are some things that you look for?
So I am pretty picky. Like I guess I would say that like the cap areas are like my first choice. So I've already purchased two in those particular areas here in Colorado. Also like looking at uniqueness, looking at how many people can fit in the house comfortably, uh, is like very important. I guess like head count, occupancy is all very important. But I mean, I also just look at AirDNA and I look at like what the best properties are doing in that area, and like how I can kind of like take advantage of like the demand there. So it's not like it's rocket science. I'm only spending probably like 5 or 10 minutes these days underwriting properties. Check a quick check of AirDNA, um, a quick showing, and I'll pretty much have all the information that I need.
What is this is kind of weird question, but like, what's your goal with getting rich? Like, why why do you care? Obviously, like, we all want money, but why is that important to you?
So I mean, I have a family now. I have a 1-year-old at home, and probably, we'll have one or two more kids. So I'd say that like that is my immediate like why as to right now. But I mean, also like I kind of feel like once I get to a certain amount of net worth, then it's really about expanding your sphere into helping others uh, get wealthy, get financially independent, that kind of thing. So I'm really all about like long term, like trying to help others achieve like kind of financial independence. Like right now, it's really really sad in America. I think like I don't know, 1 out of 100 people can retire like comfortably, and then it's like 4 out of 100 are like kind of like able to retire by like 65 or 67, and then everybody else is kind of fucked.
Yeah, I've seen that chart. It's like, 5 out of 100 or whatever, and then like 30 out of 100 are like dependent on the government or their family or some shit, and then another whatever 60 out of 100 they pretty much just work till they die.
Yeah. So I mean, like I've been able to help. Like I mean, a good neighbor has done this SDR thing for like a few years, and we've seen people accumulate 2 or 3 properties, and then they've felt comfortable enough to quit their jobs, like their 9 to 5 day jobs, which I'm always an advocate for. And I mean, like the more knowledge we have on it, the more comfortable we feel, the better advice we can give to our clients. And I mean, on average, most of our clients who have bought 2 to 3 properties have made like somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000, depending on when they bought. So it's like it's real life changing stuff, and I'm pretty passionate about like expanding our business and making sure that we help as many people, achieve that kind of financial freedom.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard your story. We've heard Chantal's story when she was on here, but what made you Airbnb curious and how did you even get into the Airbnb game?
It was like relatively lucky. I was just kind of like convincing Chantal back in the day when we were just starting out that like she needed to buy a house, and she bought the house, and we were kind of looking into like what we can do for her basement,
Mhm.
and yeah, we was like, hey, let's just like try Airbnb. We've been hearing some good things about it. You might want to, you might be able to make a little bit more money than like long term rent.
Mhm.
So she like renovated it. I kind of helped her like navigate that, and like her first month, she made like 2 grand on a really pretty shitty basement. So
Hmm.
so we just like got a little bit more intrigued, and then like slowly we kind of transitioned our business from like foreclosures and then to like regular real estate. And then as we started buying more STRs for ourselves, we kind of like started just like expanding to that sphere, I guess. And then we like started doing events that, and then it just became like extremely popular, and it just seemed like we got a lot of momentum, and then we started doing a lot of paid marketing. So um, it kind of like it was kind of lucky, but then we did a lot of work to kind of like grow uh, that avenue.
So whose idea was it to launch Good Neighbor?
Uh, Good Neighbor is Chantal's name. She came up with that name,
Okay.
and it's been kind of it's been fantastic for us. We are focusing on growing the brand like a lot more these days. Our team is growing. I think we're at like 11 or 12 people now,
Nice.
and hopefully we can double that within the next year. And yeah, like it's a really exciting time for us.
So you deal with a lot of uh, pretty rich people, upper middle class people, um, middle class people. What would you say is the biggest difference in like the mindset of someone who's like middle class um, versus somebody who is middle class? Let's define them as like purchasing the median home in Denver, which I don't know. What's the median home price here? Like 500?
It's like 625 now.
Okay,
Probably.
goddamn. Okay, well, fuck. Like in most, like in some like southern Georgia town, $600,000 home is a fucking mansion. We're only like the 1% in that area are buying. But okay, so let's define, middle class as someone who's purchasing the median home,
Mhm.
which the average person can't afford the average home nowadays. But for the sake of argument, let's say that is middle class. What's the difference between somebody in terms of their mindset who's buying a median home, $600,000 home in Denver versus the people that you've seen maybe buying the same homes for investment purposes, but have net worths north of, let's say, like $5 million?
I'd say that like the people that are kind of like already wealthy have have a lot more experience. First of all, I mean, I think it's like kind of unfair to compare like the first time home buyer or like just even somebody who's kind of like a little bit further along in their journey than somebody who's already made it, right? So I guess I would say that like the difference is that like they just can't like they don't know the strategies to like grow long-term wealth, and they're not focused on that. Like most people who are buying the medium home are just not focused on the strategies, and they're not focused on like how can I afford this property, or how can I responsibly own these assets. They're more concerned about how the interior of the house looks. They're a little more concerned about like how the house can serve them and their families, instead of I guess like thinking about it from an investment like mindset. So I think I guess like the people that are even just starting their journeys, um, and they're buying their first houses as house hacks, or they're buying their first houses as like Airbnb house hacks, or just like not even living in it at first, and Airbnb being the whole place, just to make some extra money. Those are the people that are going to do well in the long term.
What about in terms of like just their habits or how they look at deal. Like, okay, let's say you take a very wealthy person to see a house, which most of the time I'm sure you're just seeing it for them. And let's say you take like an first time, or let's say someone who owns one house and this is going to be their first investment. How do they like evaluate the deal differently?
Yeah, I guess I would say that they're like extremely non-emotional about it. It's always like a take it or leave it scenario where like, hey, like the numbers work, great. If they don't work, like I'm not buying it. So it's very like cut and dry, black and white with a lot of investors. Of course, there is the emotional investor as well who like needs to see the place, who needs to believe in the property, and that's I think there's something to that as well. Like if you're just starting out and you only have maybe like one or two properties, like you really want to be involved in the process as well. Like it's not like a bad thing to be emotional about your purchase. Like you need to feel like it's going to do well for you. And if you don't believe in the property, then you're not going to do as well. Like you're just not going to be as interested, I guess.
What about like earning income? What have you seen in how really rich people earn income versus, average people earn income?
Yeah, I think people, I mean, the main difference is that richer people own assets, and like not as rich people are going to be a little bit more focused on liabilities. So like getting like really exotic quartz and spending like 15 grand to upgrade your counters is not going to get you that 1-to-1 ratio, or, it's not going to get you that ratio that you're looking for. So yeah, like purchasing vehicles, purchasing like things that you can't really afford, that are going to almost certainly go down in value is different than purchasing like stocks and real estate that is almost certainly going to go up in value. The longer you hold.
I still think cars is a good emotional investment.
Hey, more power to you. I mean, if you can afford, I mean, hey, I drive.
I mean, if you drive to work happy every single day in your car.
Yeah, I am a real estate agent. Sometimes I'm still, I try to avoid it, but sometimes I'm still showing
Like,
houses.
If you're showing a house in your Lamborghini, like you'll be like, hell yeah, let's go drive to the mountains.
Hey, I've just bought a couple luxury vehicles. It's not, I'm not hating on it. I'm just saying that, if you're used to buying liabilities, then you don't know what it's like to own assets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it just feels a lot better to own assets that pay for those liabilities.
I think buying one liability for every asset you buy, I think that's fair. Like you're never gonna go poor doing that, or like buying like
But he's trying to say is like you could buy two assets rather than one and one.
We're all like one thing you told me the other day is like we're all gonna fucking die anyways, and none of this shit's gonna matter. So you told us actually this is an interesting point. You're like you should spend I forget what you said 10%, 10 or 20% of your income on just whatever the fuck you want.
It'll make you feel better, he said.
Yeah. This is a dangerous precedent to set, right? Like I'm telling you guys this because of how much you make. So I mean, like most people don't have.
I mean, yeah, if you're in debt and you have credit card debt and shit like that, then yeah, that's stupid. But
average income people, I'm not giving that advice to. If you're making, somewhere between 2 and 10%, or like 2 to 10x what the normal person is making,
it's like
here in
200,
Colorado,
like 250K plus. You're saying?
Yeah, if you're making, if you're in the top tax bracket, then you should be blowing some of your money on whatever you want. Like it's just like. You can't take it with you. Like it's gonna, like, no matter how much money you have and you're not spending it, if you're not making an impact with what you're earning, then you're going to be miserable anyway.
We almost bought courtside seats to a Nuggets game, and JR was like, yeah, it's $2K each. I'm like, why? He was like, Peter told us to spend 20%.
This is literally the day after.
I will go to that game with you.
All right,
dude, we literally, the only reason we didn't go is because we bought the tickets and it would not process it. And then we tried 3 different cards, and then we came back and they were gone. And they didn't have any more courtside tickets.
Man.
But next time we'll let you know.
Yeah, we got to go. I mean, who are you trying to see?
I mean, I don't really care.
Just courtside.
That was like the
Jazz.
It was the Nuggets and Jazz game.
We set up kind of like a little bit above like row 6, and we'll just see like courtside. Like, look at them, bro. They're getting their drinks served to them. They don't even have to get out their seats.
It's a different experience.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
really nice. Like the past couple of years, I've had a little bit more income, and yeah, I've just been going to games because I've been a sports fan for as long as I've been here in this country. So
Are you a
like
Nuggets fan?
huge Nuggets fan,
Oh, hell
like
yeah.
Avs fan, Broncos, all that stuff. So like
Let's
yeah, I've just been
ride,
going
baby.
to games. Just been going to games like whenever I can. It's really nice on Ticketmaster. You can just wait until like a minute before the game. You can buy tickets.
Until
we wait an
until
hour before.
Ticketmaster screws you over and you can't. There's no customer support number. We just
Yeah,
found
they
that
literally
out.
have no phone number. Like it's
Yeah.
like hidden to the nth degree. Like you can't find a phone number. How has having more money changed your lifestyle? Like, what do you do anything that's like excessive or just dumb because you have more money now?
Not like I wouldn't say that I'm like pretty practical. Like buying the expensive cars is probably the dumbest thing that I'm doing. Although, as a real estate agent, you do get like substantial tax breaks for buying those vehicles. So I mean, it's not like the most irresponsible decision. But yeah, I mean, my life is pretty simple.
Peter's Asian and he doesn't wear designer, bro. You never
Yeah.
see him rocking designer.
I really don't have anything designer. Maybe like a few Lululemon shirts. But even then, I feel like that's kind of excessive to me.
Lululemon is great.
Yeah, the lifestyle creep is definitely there. I mean, I don't look at menu prices anymore, which is nice.
Dude, I spend like $3,000 a month on food.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
do it.
We Uber
That's
Eats
fine.
every fucking day.
Well, I mean, you don't got time to go to the restaurant.
One time we were in Vegas, it was me, JR, Monica, and then our COO, and we were just at a restaurant.
Uh-huh.
And the bill came out and it was like $900. And then we were telling that story, and there were like a couple of our team members like, how do you even spend $900 at a restaurant? I was like, actually thinking about that, like my grandma would whip my ass if I ever spent $900 at a restaurant.
Yeah.
But I mean, so like we had this discussion about the, financially independent retire early people who basically like make like, as a couple, they'll make like 70, 80 grand a year.
Mhm.
They'll live in a fucking shack they'll turn off every light and never turn it on. They'll eat turkey sandwiches every day. And then they'll do this for 10 years until they have built up enough income to be able to cover that lifestyle without working. And then they'll live in a van and then they'll consider themselves, retired early or whatever. To me, I'm like, I just have never been that person that's like, I'll live in a $100 a month apartment for the next 10 years and just save all my money and invest it wisely or whatever. I'd rather just, live where I want and where I can afford and just focus on making more money, because my philosophy is like, if you make $5,000 a month, the most you could possibly ever save is $5,000 a month. And that's literally if you fucking find a way to eat and live for free and don't have a cell phone and don't have internet and all that shit. But your upside, you can always figure out how to make $100,000 a month versus trying to save $5,000 a month. And that's the best you could possibly do. So I've always just focused more on making more rather than trying to penny pinch and save more. Like I said, like I spent a decent amount of money just on food, where I could probably get my food bill down to like $400 a month if I never ate out, if I ate rice, beans, and chicken every day. And, but I just don't see a lot of value in that, especially when like there's a saying that goes, youth is wasted on the young. But there's also a saying that goes, money's wasted on the old, or wealth is wasted on the old.
Mhm.
So it's like, if you're not going to at least enjoy your 20s and early 30s and spend a little bit of money and live downtown. Like I see people in our apartment building, they're in their 60s, fucking living downtown in a $3,000 a month apartment in our building. And they go to the pool every day and all this shit. And I'm just like, that could be me in 30 years, or it could just fucking be me now. And I'll just do it now. Right. And I look at my quality of life versus theirs, and I'm like, it's probably about the same. And they're just now getting to live, because I know nobody's going to fucking live downtown for 30 years. So they're getting to live out their youth now in their 60s or 50s. And that's probably like a good 25% of our building, prime location right downtown. But I'm like, I'd rather just do it now. And, of course, yeah, if I invested all this money that I spent on rent and food at 10% in the S&P 500 by the time I'm 50, it would have grown to X amount of money that nobody would give a fuck about because nobody cares about a 55-year-old dude in a Corvette. So I think that there's always the like, oh yeah, delayed gratification. But my philosophy has always been like, as long as you're investing, as long as you're trying to make more money and your income's growing every year, and you're not living paycheck to paycheck, invest a little and then have fun a little. Because at the end of the day, when you're fucking 65, who cares if your nest egg is $15 million or $20 million because you lived, in a box for the first 5 years of your youth.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but we were at Chantal's house, and I was like, man, this house kind of makes me want to just live in a house. Peter's like, nah, man, you're not ready for this. Just live in downtown, be young. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, just wait later on. He's like, just live your life, live in downtown, be young. I was like, oh, all right, sounds good.
When did you get your primary residence?
My very first place, like 2011. I think I was like 26.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, but we've moved around so much since then. Like it was just like a stepping stone, I guess. It was all like, I mean, back then even I still had like a little bit of an investor mindset and be like, hey, like let's rent this out, let's live for free. I mean, back then I was making like 40 grand a year at this like, crappy biotech company. And the house like out earned me every year that I owned it.
That's crazy.
Like I ended up selling that thing 3.5 years later for like 120 grand more. And and it was tax free.
Tax free because you live in it.
Yeah.
So, and it made like, like $1,000 a month because we like rented out 2 of the bedrooms. So yeah, it made like $160,000 or whatever. And I only made $120,000 for those 3 years.
That's crazy.
At my crappy 9 to 5.
That's a huge hack. Like a lot of people don't know that you can live in a house for 2 years or whatever it is, 2 years, 2.5 years or something.
Yeah.
And then you sell it and the gains are tax free if you lived in it.
Yeah.
I learned that doing taxes back in 2014, where I had this like couple who came in and they lived in it for like 3 years. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like, why doesn't everybody just keep moving and taking the profits?
Yeah, it's the American dream, man. I mean, the government really, really wants you to own a house and like get the gains from that. So they really help you in this country. Some people can buy houses for like less than first month's rent and security deposit. So like they set you up really well here. And I guess like going back to like the kind of like, spending, spending a little bit more and like kind of having that mindset where like, yeah, you can't take it with you, 15 million versus 20 million, who cares? Right. I guess like the difference between like the people that are kind of penny pinching and being like, okay, I'm going to retire in 10 years is that like they don't have the confidence in themselves that they're not going to earn more like as they gain skills. Right. So those people are like in like a stagnant like situation, I guess. Like they're not honing their skills, they're not leveling up. Like us as entrepreneurs, we kind of understand that like if you're not growing, if you're not learning, then you're taking a step back. I guess like there are younger, hungrier, better prepared people that will take your place if you stop for like even a little while. You're gonna be very like left in the dust, I guess. So like having that abundance mindset and like just making sure that you're keeping up your skills and like acquiring new, I guess like just like new strategies, new ways to pivot if new exit strategies is the way to kind of like make sure that you get everything you want and still not feel like you have like a lot of pressure to like maintain your like, I guess like your income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think right now I probably live off of like probably 20% of my income. Some month, I mean, last month it was like 10%. So I look at that and I'm like, and I live downtown, prime location, cool area, whatever. I'm buying, this cool car or whatever. So I wouldn't say like, I look at the way I evaluate it sometimes is like I'll Google like what does the average American spend on their mortgage, and then I'll Google what does the average American spend on their car payment, and then I'll Google what is the average American's income, and then I'll look at what percentage of income is the average person spends on these things, and then I'll look at what I spend, and I'm like, although I spend way more, it's a smaller percentage. Like the average American spends like 30% of their income on fucking their car payment. It's insane. So I look at that and I'm like, I looked at when I ordered the Corvette, my car payment's going to be like $1,300 or something. Which I was like, damn, that's kind of a lot. Like that sounds like a lot. Like that's rent for some people. But in relation to my total income, it's really not. And then I also like, I looked at, this was kind of how I rationalized this purchase. I just looked at my income over the last 3 years, and then I averaged it out and looked at the percentage of monthly that car payment would be. And then I was like, this makes a lot of, like, this can't be deemed as irresponsible. Like,
you needed to pull up 3-year history.
Yeah. It's not irresponsible as long as, you're perfectly fine, wasting that money.
Peter just bought 3 cars, dude.
I have 2. I have 2 cars. I have 2 cars.
You have a nice ass Tesla though.
Yeah, I mean that's a nice car. I enjoy driving it. I bought the wife a Mercedes over 6,000 pounds, just so I can get some tax breaks there. But yeah, I mean, you're never going to convince me that a Corvette is a good decision. Okay, it is like an okay decision based on how much you make. I'm fine with you buying that car, but it sucks.
If it was over 6,000 pounds,
just wait till you see what I do to it.
Okay,
I'm gonna let you drive it, and then
okay,
you're gonna change your mind.
Fine.
We'll rescind that statement.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, you were the first person to be like, "That's an old man car."
Hey, man, I've only seen like 55-year-old white guys
Dude,
drive that car.
But I had a Corvette C7, and I don't know. I feel like I make the car. The car doesn't make me. Like I make it look cooler than
Peter.
That's all branding, man. That's what the advertisers want you
to do.
Dude,
also it's a pretty hard car to get in and out of.
Like,
so I'm like, how are you 55 plus and like driving this car?
It's like when you see a Subaru, what do you think of?
6-foot dude named Todd that likes to hike every weekend and has a golden retriever
and lives in Colorado.
Lives in Colorado.
That's what Peter sees, the Corvette.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm whatever. I'm gonna make it cool. You're
gonna make it cool for sure.
Plus, the new one has the fucking engine in the back. Like it looks like a Ferrari. Like you can't go wrong.
Okay.
All right.
Liability.
So, for the average person though, that's out there, and they're like, I make 65, whatever the average income is, 65K. And I want to be in this Peter guy's position. I want to have his short-term rentals. I want to build a bigger business. What would you say? Like, let's say your cousin called you up and was like, "Hey, I make 65K a year. I need to make more money, or I want to make more money."
Well,
like,
Peter was making 40K at a biotech company.
Yeah, like let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
You were making 40K. What was your thought process of like, I want to do more?
Yeah. So like, I guess getting into a little bit more of like my story, I kind of like quit that job after I found out that, you can make a lot more money in real estate. I got my license while I was at that job, and, started doing real estate part-time. And then I was like, look, this is a dead end for me. I'm not going to work for anybody else ever again.
What was your first like deal that you sold or helped somebody buy?
So my first deal was my place, but, the other place that I sold was, it was just like a regular house to a regular person. I didn't know anything. I didn't deserve that commission. No way. Right. So that story is not really that. I honestly don't even remember. Cause it was just so normal, I guess. And yeah, I just didn't know anything about like what to even advise that person. It was just like, oh, I'm so lucky to be like even part of this transaction.
Did they know it was like the first house you sold?
Yeah, I told them. Yeah, there's just nothing you can do to hide that, because like you're just like dumb.
But nobody was helping you. Like you didn't have a brokerage that was like, hey.
I did have a brokerage, but yeah, they were kind of like a very hands off. Like they had a little bit of training here and there, but I just kind of had to figure it out on my own, which is not what I would recommend. Like I think it took a significant chunk of time away from like being like unsuccessful. Like I
Mhm.
was unsuccessful for the first year or two because I didn't like, I thought I could do it myself, but it would have been so much easier to like find someone successful and just kind of learn from them. Um, yeah.
I'm kind of interested to know what yours and Chantal's relationship is like in business. What are like your strong suits? Like, what does she bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? How do you guys complement each other?
I think this is a really good question. We like got along extremely well. Like the first, the first few months that we even met,
Mhm.
and I think like she is extremely strong when it comes to like personal promotion and like just like confidence and just like I guess like she is a people person, like the,
Yeah.
the most extroverted person that I probably know. And she just like she enjoys like promoting the brand. She enjoys like making clients happy. She enjoys just like I guess like interaction with the team. Uh and overall she's just like a much better networker than I am, I guess.
Yeah.
Um
And then what do you like to do?
I am more like kind of like I'm not introverted, but I'm kind of like in the middle there.
Mhm.
So I really do enjoy helping clients. I do enjoy like training more of the educational side. So like I really like interacting with with the team and like kind of teaching them what I know. And I
Mhm.
think that's like my passion these days.
Yeah.
So like also like business expansion is something that like I'm really into. Um kind of like figuring out new strategies to work less is kind of like where my phase of life is now.
How to like remove yourself basically out of the company.
Yeah, I'm a
Mm.
little bit older than Chantal, so like, and I'm at a different life stage. So I'd like to work a little less
Mhm.
over the next 5 years. So
So do you guys kind of like just split roles? Like, let's say somebody comes in for training, you and only you take it, or do you guys kind of just come in and fill in spots when you can?
so like I guess when we first started the company, it was like very like the two of us would just do anything.
Yeah.
But now it's like as the company matures, we're getting more and more into like, okay, I'm good at this, you're good at this.
Yeah.
Like this is where you should more efficiently spend your time because you're better at this.
Mhm.
So we're doing that a lot more, and it's becoming like a lot more efficient. Where like she's just in charge of certain things, I'm in charge of certain things. Like we don't even have to talk about it,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. And then in the next, let's say 5 years, like what kind of structure do you guys see for your team? Like, do you and Chantal kind of just want to be on the back end and not really be doing showings and not really going out and talking with clients? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, that would be the plan. So like we want to build a brokerage that supports our agents in like the most efficient way.
Mhm.
So I was listening to some other podcast where they had like a team of 20 something, and then they had like 9 salaried employees,
Mm.
where they had like a business coach and they had like all the admin people. They just made it really, really easy for their agents to be successful.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to be like, I guess heading towards that direction.
Yeah.
So whether that's like going into different states and kind of like building smaller ancillary teams in those areas just to take advantage of like the SDR markets there, or kind of like expanding the Denver team even more to kind of help us like round out the markets here.
Makes sense.
So I think this would be a good clip for YouTube, so I'm going to bring it up. You invested in the GameStop pump. Can you tell the story of your experience with that?
Sure. So I'm like a very addictive gambler. That's probably one of the weak points of my personality, I would say. I'm like addictive personality, especially with gambling. Blackjack is my game.
Is it really if you're losing though?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody loses.
Everybody
right?
loses, yeah.
Everybody loses. So yeah, I would say that like that's one of my like weak spots. With respect to GameStop, I was like super into it, just checking Reddit threads the whole time. I picked up a couple options in GameStop.
How'd you first get alerted by it? Just Reddit?
Reddit, and like, I mean, yeah, I guess it was like all over the news. So like I just kept like getting into it, like talking about it with my group of friends who are also like kind of into like stock investing and that kind of thing. So it's like, oh yeah, hey, this is kind of like a new thing. We should throw some money at it. And I did. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of money or anything. I think I just bought some like call options when GameStop was at like somewhere around $100. And you know, with options, you can like leverage your funds. So I think $8,000 turned into like $78,000
In one day.
in one day.
So you invested how the next day or like how many days later?
It was like 2 days later. I think like, well, it turned into like, so $8,000 turned into like 26,000. And then the next day it turned into like 70 something thousand. And at that point, it's because I'm a gambler, I didn't sell it. I thought it was still going to go up. I mean, I had plenty of chances to sell, right? From 8,000 to 24,000 or 26,000 or whatever, I had a chance to sell. I had a chance to sell from, 26 to 76,000. And then, so like that morning it turned into 78,000, something like that. I took a shower, came back down, and it was all gone.
So was that because they halted trading on it, or was it before or after that?
No, it just like completely crashed. So, I mean, that was like still early days when like we didn't know what like Citadel was doing or like what any.
So that was
of the bigger
before
companies
like
were doing.
Robinhood froze.
Yeah, it was before Robinhood froze everything. It was like a week or two before all that happened.
Mm.
Like I got in pretty early. I think the stock went from like 100 to like 500, and I still didn't sell it, and then it went back down to 100 like immediately. And then I still had multiple chances to sell after that because like it still went like up and down for a few days, and I just thought it was like I thought it was going to go up more, and it didn't. So yeah, I ended up losing like a few $1,000s.
How much would you say that people should focus on one and I wouldn't consider that an investment. It sounds more like you just wanted to gamble and it just seemed like a fun thing and
Definitely.
But brings up the question, how much do you think people should focus on one thing versus diversifying? So for example, stocks versus real estate or whatever. For me, I've I actually watched this Dave Ramsey video, which I think you hate him. And
I don't hate him. I just hey, I think that Dave Ramsey is very good for the
Donovan's calling
for
me
the
with
middle
Yeah, he's
class
calling me.
American.
our sales guys.
I'm gonna step out.
He's probably closing a deal. That's the only time he calls me
Yeah.
if Phil doesn't answer. But anyways, I heard Dave Ramsey say something interesting, and he was there's this video where he's like going through this guy's portfolio or whatever, and he's like, the portfolio is like 80% real estate.
Mm.
And then he's like, yeah, you're probably going to tell me that I'm like over leveraged in real estate. And he was like, well, what percentage of your knowledge in investing is in real estate? And he was like, probably like more than 80%. He's like, okay, then in relation to your knowledge, you're pretty well balanced. Whereas most people think they got to be like in stocks, in crypto, in real estate or whatever. I used to be in all that shit. Like I put like, I don't know, I bought like one Bitcoin when it was at like 25 and it turned into like 60. Dude, I sold at 58.
Okay.
Like I sold at
Nice.
the right time. And, but I realized how lucky I was. Like I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I made 100% return in a couple months. I'm like, that's probably not going to happen again. So I just pulled out and then it crashed like a couple weeks later. But I recognized that it was luck. And I looked after that experience, and then I, bought a couple other coins that ended up not turning into shit. And I also did, S&P 500 investing for like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months. And then eventually I made a little bit of money and just pulled out. But I realized that the only thing I really know, because I've read all the books, I've watched all the YouTube videos, like I've talked to so many investors, is real estate. So at a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to focus on real estate. Like I like real estate. I like buildings. I like being able to see your investment and like I threw a Halloween party in which you were invited to and didn't come.
Yeah.
At my Airbnb in Denver. I'm like, you can't throw a Halloween party on your stock. So I like, just the physical like part of the asset class. So I only do real estate. And some people might think that, well, that's kind of dumb because you're not diversified or whatever. But I'm curious as to how your portfolio is split up, and what you recommend for most people if they should, have a 401k and also invest in stocks and also, do real estate, or if they should just go all in on one.
Yeah, I think I'm very similar to you in that, like, I think the knowledge to like money invested strategy is pretty sound. Like, I would say that I'm very over leveraged in real estate as well. I think over 80% of my stuff is in like real estate equity, or in like, especially like my business is also real estate. So like all my active income is real estate. Almost all of my passive income is also real estate. But I guess I would say that like when investing in the S&P or investing in like retirement funds, like that stuff is also very valid, especially if you can get like a 401k match from your company, or like if you can just hold on to it for the long term. It's like a very nice passive investment, especially if you can tax shelter that kind of stuff in like retirement accounts. So like maximize those with stocks, but then like and then just invest in what you know. And I mean, to be frank, real estate allows you to leverage your funds a lot better than stocks, because like most of the time it's 1-to-1, unless you're buying options or like weird advanced strategies that most people don't really like care to learn about. So I'd say that like, real estate is the only thing where you can leverage like maybe like 5% of your income, or sorry, like 5% down payment to purchase something like up to $1 million if you can qualify, or like up to however many millions of dollars. So, and it's only going to go up, and the passive income is really nice. I mean, and like STR has only been around for like, I don't know, I feel like Airbnb has been around for like 10 years, maybe a little bit, even like a little bit less than that if you really think about like when Airbnb blew up. So, I mean, like back in the day, you only had like long-term rent and maybe a little bit of midterm.
Yeah.
So, and people were still like, the richest people still owned a ton of real estate and a ton of stocks. So I'd say that like those two things are like an absolute must to invest in. And then everything else is kind of like, if you don't have that much knowledge, I wouldn't invest more than 5% of your portfolio in like crypto or like weird NFTs or, whatever. Yeah.
Cool. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but just want to hear any last thought or advice that you have for people out there. Again, maybe someone that's working a 9-to-5, they want to get into real estate, they want to start short-term rentals. Any advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I guess I would say that like this is a long game. Like real estate is a long game. It's not a get rich quick scheme. If you approach it like that, you will probably lose money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking like 5, 10, 15, 20 years of like hard work before you become like extremely successful. The market cycle for real estate is extremely long. So, I mean, like you're looking at like a 10-year cycle, maybe even like a 20 or 30-year cycle before like a recession really hits real estate. So like this might be a great time to buy right now. I mean, we're in like a very soft like market right now. The buyer has almost all the power. We're offering quite a bit below asking every single time, almost, unless it's like a truly spectacular property. So yeah, I mean, like now's the time to build wealth.
Cool. Let people know where they can find you on social media.
So our website is thegoodneighbors.com. We're all over TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. But I'm not really on social media, so I don't know what those are.
He's like, Facebook. What's Facebook?
So paraphrasing, Peter said, "Don't be a pussy. Buy a house."
What good neighbor?
Sure. What JR said.
Cool. We'll see you guys on the next episode.